has already blackened the regional government building in Tuzla. Now the empty windows look at yet another protest march. One of many in Bosnia nowadays. Is it a political spring? This is where it all started. Middle-class families march alongside students and the unemployed. The protests against unemployment, graft and political inertia have already toppled 4 out of 10 regional governments.
Corrupt privatization, political parties controlling the judiciary, controlling the police, promoting terror in everyday life, and that's the worst thing, that they have actually stolen the money from the people and they've got richer.
We have been lied to 20 years. We have been oppressed for 20 years. People are hungry. People are starving. We don't have job perspectives here. We don't have a future here if we don't change something.
In early February, government buildings were set alight in Sarajevo, Senica and Tuzla. It was the worst violence since the end of the war in 1995. But even after the violence, all over the country, the protests continue. Peacefully this time. Tuzla is the regional capital. In the job centre, they tell us that this region has 100,000 unemployed people and only 80,000 people in work. Less than 4 million people live in Bosnia. Depending on which statistics you use, 25 to 45% of them are without an official work contract. The grey economy governs all social and political relations in the country. Aldin triggered the protests, and in the resulting turmoil, dozens of ministers lost their jobs. Aldin received threats, but doesn't regret exposing the corruption experienced by he and his wife.
The Minister of Social Service in the government tells her, if you want to work in the healthcare, you need to pay 25,000 to the director of that institution. I get a job in the telecom of the Bosnia. Regularly on the concourse. I was working over there 3 months. After that 3 months, my supervisor say, hey, you didn't pay 25,000 to employ here, so if you don't pay, you will get fired and my cousin will come to work here.
Bosnia loses an estimated 800 million euros a year due to manipulated public tenders. Tax revenue is low, while public expenditure and debt are climbing to vertiginous heights. Emir Dikic chairs the board of the Bosnian branch of the anti-corruption NGO Transparency International.
The reform of the judiciary system has failed. Basically, the judiciary system is still under the high political pressure, and basically we have a country which is corrupt by the 6 or 7 persons which are the most powerful persons in the country. Those guys are president of the leading big political parties.
There used to be several factories here employing around 3,000 people, including Sakib Kopik, who worked in the chemical plant for 33 years. Now he is one of the protesters and says people want to be governed by experts. Laid-off workers use the expression mafia privatization. What do they mean by that?
Someone comes to buy a company for almost nothing. They get 1, 2 or 3 bank loans. Then they destroy the company. They close it down. And the privatization mafia put the money into their own pockets. The people who invented these privatization schemes should be sent to prison, where they should crush stones with a rubber mallet.
We drive to Zenica, the heartland of Bosnian steel production. The people here have also toppled the regional government. All over Bosnia, citizens' assemblies are pushing for transparency on public spending and the abolition of privileges for politicians. Aldin and Mustafa call themselves change makers, launching flash mobs against air pollution and taking part in citizens' assemblies.
The state structure is too complicated. In Bosnia-Herzegovina, we have 13 regional governments, more than 130 ministries and ministers, and on top of that, we have 5 presidents. We have a whole bunch of leaders, but they don't lead. The European Union and the US should help us change.
We move on to the capital, Sarajevo. Workers are repairing government buildings burned by protesters a few days ago. Many people point the finger at the Dayton Agreement. The deal ended the war, but by dividing power in order to stop fighting between Orthodox Serbs, Catholic Croats and Muslim Bosniaks, it created a dysfunctional system unable to steer Bosnia through economic transition. We asked one diplomat for his opinion on how to move forward.
I appeal to the governing decision makers, do not be afraid of the population. Listen to the requests of the citizens. And I appeal to the public prosecutors too, don't be afraid to do your jobs.
Will the country join the EU one day? For the moment, failure to reform the constitution has frozen Bosnia's bid for EU accession. Nevertheless, the European Union Special Representative hasn't given up hope.
Well, what we can do and what we are doing is making sure that the offer of eventually membership is clear to everybody, the EU perspective is kept alive.
Back in Tuzla, the Dita laundry powder factory is standing idle, having also been privatised. The workers guarding the site say the machines are still functional.
The factory hasn't functioned for a year, but it could be restarted any time. We prevent the machines being removed. 5 shifts guard them at night, 4 shifts during the day.
The factory owner didn't pay social security contributions for these workers, meaning that they are no longer eligible for healthcare, social security or pensions.
There are still 119 employees here. Their salaries were last paid in January 2013.
Frankie is a rapper who performs all around the world. During the war, his family took refuge in Germany, but today Frankie lives in Tuzla and raps about the situation.
Politicians have been telling us the same lies over and over for the last 20 years. It's the tactics of nationalism. Politicians use it as a weapon, and that's the main root of our problems and conflicts, even today.
It's too early to call the protests a Bosnian spring, but without change there will be one, and possibly a violent one. The message from the EU is clear: clean up corruption and keep ethnic questions out of it, otherwise you're playing with fire. The Balkans are a powder keg, and Bosnia is part of it.